Hi. When we are talking about procrastination, I first want to talk to you about why do you actually procrastinate? A lot of people have labeled themselves that they are procrastinators. But the first thing first I want to tell you is you're not a procrastinator. You have a habit of procrastination. And I want to tell you another thing about procrastination. Procrastination can actually be a power tool because it is something that is guiding you to go deeper within yourself to identify the root cause of your problem. Think about it. When you were a child, or in a recent past, maybe you had fever. You took the medicine for fever and fever came down, only to spike back in next 3 4 5 hours, and then you took medicine again, it again came down. But it kept happening again and again. So what you did is you went to the doctor, and the doctor checked you and prescribed you a medicine to take for infection. And the moment you took the medicine for infection, your fever never came back, isn't it? You must be having this experience in your life, or you must have seen somebody going through it. Now, your procrastination is exactly like your fever. Procrastination is only a symptom. The root cause is something else. So no matter how many sticky notes you put around, no matter how many alarms or apps you use, no matter how many times you tell other people to remind you to do some task, you go back straight into old habits of procrastination because there is a challenge that you're facing in terms of not handling the root cause. So let's first identify what could be your root cause of you procrastinating. So from there, I want to tell you something here about procrastination. Most of times when you are procrastinating, and it's a habit that you have since very long time, a lot of times people rely on willpower. People think that with sheer willpower you will be able to overcome your procrastination. But in reality, the situation is far more complex than that. You think you can control these things with self control and motivation, but self control and motivation can only work for a little time, right? The self control and motivation, both of these depend on the reward system that their brain produces, the dopamine. Now what happens is, every time you take up a task, unless and until you finish it, and not just finishing it, after finishing, when you actually receive the reward for it, there possibly could be the gap between these three: starting a task, finishing the task, and then getting the reward for it. Now think about it. Let me give an example here like that. Suppose you are preparing for exam, so you have to study, you give exam, and then the results come out, and those results actually tell you whether you've passed or failed and where you're going in your life ahead, right? But right, starting from studying to giving the exam, there's a gap. From giving the exam to getting the results, there's a gap. So there's such huge gap between these three things that your brain cannot really understand that you're going to get reward once you pass that exam. And that's where you start procrastinating, and that happens for pretty much everything in your life. Like, you think about losing weight and you want to exercise, and then you want the results to come to you. It doesn't happen immediately, right? Same thing happens when you're preparing for an interview or for a presentation. Pretty much everything, when the results are not instant and there's a long gap, you lose motivation. These are the factors that actually affect your motivation. And in between these, studying to exam to result, like these three things, pretty much everything in your life, what happens is anxiety, fear of failure, negative thinking, all of these start coming up. The self doubt starts coming up, and all of this then bring a lot of exhaustion in your mental emotional space. And the moment you feel those that exhaustion coming in, your brain starts directing all its energy towards the pleasure. Your brain's primary function since millions of years is to keep you safe and to keep you protected and to keep you comfortable. In the human evolution, it is diagnosed that all of us, all humans, have got the procrastination gene. What does that mean? All of us look for instant gratification. You see, when millions of years of back, there was not so much of agriculture, or there was no food available, so we had to walk miles and miles before we find that one tree which probably would bear the fruits and we would eat them. And again, you would know next how many miles you wouldn't get that food. The next thing was, we were the prey to the predators. We were at the lowest of the life chain. So what would happen is, when you step out of your cave and suppose there's a predator waiting for you, so a lot of times it happened that your brain perceived that you're not safe, you're not comfortable, weather conditions were really terrible. All of these plays a lot of important role when it comes to your brain's primary function, and your brain wants to put you back into survival zone. And pretty much, if you understand your life right now, that if you're listening to this podcast, or if you're watching this video, you have internet. That means you have some smart device to watch this. That means you are eating food. That means you have clothes to wear. That means you have a shelter. So as long as your brain sees that you don't have food, shelter, clothes problem, it cannot fathom that there is any problem that you have related to your survival. And as long as there is no issue with survival, your primary brain, which controls your habits on automation, on autopilot, this brain doesn't really make an effort to make you achieve the goal, because emotionally you are internally quite satisfied that, okay, I don't have to worry about tomorrow. And my brain can't really fathom that, how does my life change after 2 years if I put this effort right now? I don't even know. I can't see that for a future, because I don't know if tomorrow I'll get attacked by something. And fortunately or unfortunately, you can say that back then the predators were attacking us physically, but today we don't have physically attacking predators to us. They are either in the zoo or the reserve. Then what makes our primary brain kicks in this survival mechanism? So what happens in our this primary brain is, your brain cannot distinguish between the physical pain and an emotional pain. And if you look at today's lifestyle, we all are going through something or the other in terms of emotional pain. It may not be an emotional trauma per se, but it could be like traffic, it could be loan, it could be your boss, it could be that deal that you're not able to crack. All of these things, the stressors which are there in our space, it could be social media, news channels, anything. The stressor that's there in your space is constantly triggering the emotional response to either run away or fight back. And in this running away and fight back, you go back to resorting your primary brain survival mechanism. And that's where the whole procrastination begins. Now, I want to tell you that if you want to overcome procrastination and be more productive in your life, then first thing first is, you have to look at what kind of goals are you setting. Do you have abstract goals? Can you have clear, specific goals? The first thing is that. The second thing that you need to do is, you need to associate emotionally yourself with your future self. A lot of time people cannot visualize what's there in the future, and that's the reason they procrastinate. So how can you identify yourself right now with a 1 year later you, or a 2 year later you? That will help you to achieve that goal faster. How can you be working on the emotions of overwhelm and anxiety? Because most people get anxious and they feel they can't handle the task. They start doubting themselves. They feel they have to do a task in a certain way. The perfectionism that kills most of the success of people, and most people procrastinate because of perfectionism. If you feel that you're not capable enough, or there's one chemical issue that some people face, and that is called as attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. Now you got to identify, the first thing is, what could be the reason for your procrastination. So once you established your goals, second step is to visualize your future. Third step is to figure out what is your exact problem and why do you procrastinate. Four is, create the plan of action to overcome procrastination. Fifth, finally set small goals. Small goals and short term goals. Don't set big and long term goals, because that's where you'll start getting overwhelmed. So how about setting really small goals, plan of action, And then, maybe a monthly goal, and then breaking it down to a daily goal, and implement every single day. Take only 4 to 5 actions to implement it. Another thing for you to be more productive is look at your environment. Make it more conducive that can support your goal. And the last but the not the least is find the right role model who can support you in your journey. So here you go. Do all of these things and do let me know how you find your procrastination working out and you becoming more and more productive.